Saturday, 8th of October 2022. Just trying out a new screensaver, obviously. The full moon fever. The moon looks incredible, but you can't see any of the detail on this camera. If I zoom in, looks like a torch. I don't know if this would qualify as a UFO video. Definitely get more views. Maybe title Waiting for the Mothership for a Rescue. Just edit out any extraneous noises. Now, if this was a New Age video, I would be saying time to release all tensions upon a bonfire. It is like, well, it does just make you aware of the natural cycles. All that has happened in the last month. And the waiting for the truly spectacular. Something you want to create in your own life, of course, not something to watch. What I was originally thinking about were reality tunnels, because we're looking on nature, which laughs in the face of all ideology. And reality tunnels are like a form of ideology. But the term reality tunnel, I first saw Robert Anton Wilson use, and he was some kind of Discordian character involved in Operation Mind Flip. And I don't know if what he did you would call chaos magic. I think it must have been to some extent almost preempting the concept of meme warfare. He was one of these characters who seemed to come out of academia and then overlapped with nefarious experiments being conducted on part of intelligence. A colleague of Terence McKenna and Timothy Leary, the holy trinity of Irish American psychedelic explorers and entrepreneurs. It's very hard to work out how much of that was real and how much of it was sponsored, and how much of it was sponsored anyway, and was used as an excuse for a lot of parties. And Ken Kesey and La Honda, the Hells Angels, Hunter S. Thompson, making strange jokes about exotic substances that can only be retrieved from the human body in the 1970s. But anyway, it was Robert Anton Wilson, who I believed lived in Ireland in the 90s. If you knew him, please tell us an anecdote. Ireland must have been a very different place in the early 90s. To me, I only remember that as part of childhood and going to school. And today, leaving Dublin, travelling down here to Wicklow, I passed by my old primary school, and it had a huge rainbow flag flying from the schoolyard, which I had never seen before. And I thought, wow, funny to find oneself in agreement with various Russian politicians about our satanic leaders and culture in the West. Satanic sounds kind of melodramatic, but I think it's a good description as inversion. A deliberate inversion. It's like, how much inversion can you do before the normies notice anything? Or is it just a case of finding out how many people have a soul? Archaics argues 33%, which is that funny number again. So, if you're on YouTube, you can tune into Archaics' channel and you can follow his reality tunnel. If you get right down, if you try and break it right down to what is being sold on Archaics, it is rebranded Gnosticism. And I find all the criticism of his channel really childish and adolescent. And even some of the podcasts he's doing himself are hard to watch because he's so far beyond the person he's talking to, because he actually is somebody, whatever the truth of his story about his life and character, whatever the truth of any of that, he obviously is someone who's very well read. And it's the funny thing is seeing him deal with people who only watch videos. Entire generations of attention deficit disordered minds. And he's saying, look at the evidence. But nobody will. So nobody will actually sit down and look through the data. So instead, it's just another video to watch. It's more entertainment. I get the impression that in the last 20 years, a larger group of people has come into existence who'd sort of given up on the hopeless state of contemporary television. And it drifted into all these alternative topics, um, and endless 6 hour videos about Tartaria and the flat earth and the hollow earth. And it's clear a lot of people are just watching strange esoteric ramblings as a form of entertainment instead of like they might have done in the 90s, which was to watch The X Files and Star Trek. And it all seems a bit like what you choose to watch and give your attention to is the reality tunnel you're tuning into, but then which begins to form around your consciousness. So, as I was saying, um, Robert Anton Wilson talked about this, and he was making a point, like if you were a fundamentalist Christian or a Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or atheist, you are in a reality tunnel where everything is filtered through those ideologies, concepts, those conception of what this reality is. And that's a fair point. Because he actually asks you to make these experiments yourself. Like, what would it mean like to live as a Muslim for a week, and then the next week a Baptist, then a Presbyterian, and then a Catholic, and then a evangelical? Like, if you're waiting for the rapture, you're going to interpret all the evidence as pointing to a rapture, making the territory fit the map, which is obviously a dangerous thing to do, and of course extends to political philosophies and how they played out in the 20th century of National Socialism versus communism versus capitalism. It's looking out on a tree and seeing it as part of a living, dynamic system interacting with one's own field of information and consciousness. Or it's looking out on a tree and saying, I could chop that down and make some firewood. Or it's looking at the tree and saying that it's blocking my view. I'll chop it down. Or it's looking at the tree and saying, I'll insure the tree for €100,000 so somebody else won't chop it down because you've made it into a financial object. So it's just funny on YouTube that it can seem like what channels do you tune into? Like if I tune into archaics, am I forming a Gnostic tunnel around my perception of the world and start interpreting everything in that context? It's like if I go and watch Gigi Young, am I just watching theosophy and anthroposophy? Funny stuff with all that Rudolf Steiner and Madame Blavatsky. stuff is they make all these extraordinarily detailed readings of sort of channeled readings of, and then along with Edgar Casey of Atlantis and Lemuria and the stories of all these people and different races interacting and the Firestone collapse of civilization, survivors fleeing to give technology to primitive people that they ruled over, the Tuatha. That's all. It's all very interesting. But you just wonder, am I just reading repackaged theosophy? You wonder, what is the source of all this information? Is it just channeling? Because there was a few remote viewers on YouTube I found, and I was following them for a while, and then they actually deleted off all their material, and they'd stated that they were now doing private consultations, doing work for people, and they were limited to what they said. And then they'd pop back on a few times live, and to answer some questions to the rabid fans, and then they popped off again and deleted everything again. Remote viewing is interesting. There are other public remote viewing channels as well, of course. What was the well-known one? Farsight, I think. Well, this lady was interesting, saying World War III was baked into the cake as something destined to happen, and what was happening at the moment wasn't it, but it would be around the time of the next presidential election in 24, and would be in the Middle East, and that would draw in all the powers, as one can have fun looking at maps and see who doesn't like who, particularly in the Mediterranean and the Levant and the Holy Land and friends. And then, of course, Archaics is saying that you can have pendulum swing right this year from November and then going into next year. And I was a bit dubious about Archaics making predictions about 2040 and 2046, because there probably is a lot of money to be made in end of the world doom and gloom if you put dates into the future where people won't remember them, or if they do remember them, there's not really any consequence. But he was interesting because he was actually making predictions about what's going down in the next 6 to 12 months. So that I wonder how much his reputation will suffer if he's wrong, and how much he will grow if he's right. Of course, it makes me think of Cliff High, who makes endless incorrect predictions, but only seems to become more popular. He's saying, any day now, UFOs and $600 silver. That seems to be the main one. Anything else he has said, I think it's information most people are aware of who are curious. But it's funny. Cliff High definitely makes me think it's true that over time people tune into a show just for liking the personality, and even if all the predictions are wrong and whatever, it's like there are some real grifter channels that seem to have lots of Christians watching them, and they never seem to have discerned that there are wolves all around them, happy to take not just their money but their attention. Like the other day, I turned on Marfugal News, and he had his lights turned off in the studio, talking about nuclear weapons, and it was like it's all extra dramatic. Like this YouTube channel is gonna give me that warning just in time to get into the bunker, top off my supplies. I don't know, it seems a bit silly. You can't really live like that. So whatever fate befalls the collective does not befall the individual. Whatever happened to Pompeii didn't happen to everybody in Pompeii. Of course, the scariest reality tunnel is the mainstream media, the news, posters on walls advertising accepted wisdom, the advice of experts and technocrats, the phony legal morality that inflicts death and despair with a pen and paper. But if none of these people have a soul, then they are merely characters in a movie trapped on train tracks, moving forward, never being able to turn left or right, only taking in instruction to act out the use of the collective unconscious to generate behavior and thus reality. Which gives us the strange tension between those who have a soul interacting with those who don't, because you could become confused about what this world is, being heaven, hell, or purgatory. Because we came here to learn, to remember, and to co-create. Be interesting if there was a cheat code written into this construct, whether it be an organic divine construction or an artificial synthesis jacked into our nervous system. Whatever this space is, this fractal unfolding, it is a place where you can look upon a wood and think, I can turn that into a house or a boat or fuel. That we are in a dynamic system, but we are trapped within the system with people who can't learn what the system is. Trapped, always reacting. But if you realize that you can act in your own life, then you have found a key. It's actually a funny irony that people mock the younger generation, the millennial and then Generation Z, or Z if you prefer. Actually not sure. What do they say in America? I think they say Generation Z rather than Z. The last generation before Generation Alpha rebuilds the new world and new earth. But no, it's just a funny irony that people laugh at the younger generation for being special, for being given participation trophies, for thinking of themselves as the most important person in the room. And it's like how truth is always given to us, but with a little dash of poison to ruin it. It's like they must always give us some metaphysical truths about this reality and how we can interact with it and make it better. But there's always a little twist to the information, because I think we are all completely unique and we are all a world, a universe unto ourselves in the realization of our free will and sovereignty. And we're interacting with all these other beings and natural expressions of life. But what the younger generation are told for being perfect, unique snowflakes is that they can have it all on a platter without doing any work or making any effort, and that they can interact with the world from a sense of smug superiority without having experienced any trauma that they may then be able to transmute into wisdom. Because if you're going to join the conversation, you need something interesting to say, something that is hard won from experience. Instead, they're being told they're special for doing nothing, and that all that they need to do is parrot the latest diktat from Big Brother. So nothing in the system will encourage you to wake up to your power. And all systems are sociopathic in their false light of their pretense for caring anything about you. What they care is that you are a statistic, that you are in it together for conforming to the herd. And that herd, if you ever wondered, reading your history books, how the horrors were done, then you have found out the truth these last 2 years. The truth of how people were sent to camps, to how people collaborated, to how people adapted to new normals. Now, none of it is a mystery. And we find ourselves more wise, perhaps, for having lived through the dystopian cosplay with a very vivid realization of who all the people are around us. How utterly gullible and corruptible they are. And how dangerous they are to your mind, body, and soul. Because if there's a hill to die on, it is bodily autonomy. Because doctors and nurses are as much a collection of garbage in this sociopathic culture as all those who go along to get along. And day by day, action by action, attempt to turn this world into hell. While those of us remembering who we are, create the world in our image, day by day, action by action. You never back down from what is yours in remembering who you are and why you came into this experience. Imagine if you could remember your name. And you got superpowers, instant upgrade, weapons cheat, to go on a rampage of truth and justice. The world wants you to bend to it, but you can see the stain upon their soul. And the crime you do to your own temple is something unforgivable when you have seen the truth.